lovers of the liminal and the weird, and welcome to another video by Liminal Spaces. Today I'm going to be doing a deep dive into Jeff Vandermeer's 2014 novel Annihilation, which I think is one of the best cosmic horror novels that I've read in a long time. Absolutely incredible novel. If you want my quick review on it, where I give a little bit of the publication history and my general opinions on it, you can find that if you just go back a couple videos on the channel. In this video, I'm going to be really looking into what this story is about. There will be, of course, a lot of plot spoilers because I'm really going to dive into this and take it apart. So if you haven't read it yet, you might want to read it before you watch this video, or if you don't mind spoilers, watch on. So our main character in this novel is called the Biologist, and this is a novel that starts with 4 women that have just entered Area X. And Area X is an area that's been closed off. The government has said it's because of an ecological disaster, but we slowly learn throughout the novel that it's probably more along the lines of an alien, not invasion, an incident of extraterrestrials, we'll say. But before we get into that, the novel does an incredible thing. As it goes, it reveals more and more about the biologist's past and character. So I'm just going to cover those things first. I will state that the way that he slips these in, these kind of past memories and stories of the biologist, is really well done in this novel, because you have this cosmic horror going on, and then it's not even mundane, but these life stories that are very realistic, that saddle up next to this crazy, hard to believe cosmic horror that's going on. It's incredible. So our main character is the biologist, and she is a very antisocial person. She really finds nothing more enjoyable than watching a small biome or ecosystem function by herself. That's what a good time is for her. She has a very hard time connecting with other people, and we learn a lot about the story of her with her husband, and her husband calls her Ghost Bird. We never learn her name. She's always the biologist, or in these past memories, Ghost Bird. And we learn that of course she has a hard time connecting with people, but we also learn that once she's become a biologist, she gets grants to go out and do stuff, and will really enjoy it, and then get fired from these positions. And even with her husband is constantly trying to build a bridge for the two of them to connect, and she refuses it constantly. And this is kind of a regret she has that we learn over time. But anyway, her husband ends up going on an expedition to Area X. And of course, the novel starts with her going on an expedition to Area X. And they call it the 12th, or they call her expedition the 12th expedition. Her husband was on the 11th. And they sent all men on her husband's expedition and all women on her expedition, trying to see how Area X can affect different genders, if it does. And part of the reason that he decides to go to Area X is because he needs some kind of change. He can't handle his marriage with her, where he doesn't seem able to really make a connection with her. And he disappears. No, he goes into Area X, and she doesn't hear from him for a long time, and then suddenly he just appears back at their house. And he's different. He doesn't have all of his memories. His personality seems gone. He doesn't even really seem like the same person. So she, and this is another thing that she finds regret in, calls Area X, and they come and pick him up. And she decides that she is going to go to Area X. And she claims throughout the novel that she's not going there to find him. But I think that finding him is a major motivation for her, even though she claims that it is not. So that's just the quick stuff in the past that we need to know. Really, truly, the meat of this novel is around her in Area X. I believe this novel must have been influenced by Roadside Picnic, by the Strugatsky brothers. Sorry if I said that wrong. However, a lot of people have leveled this belief at Jeff Vandermeer, and Vandermeer has claimed that he never read Roadside Picnic. He associates the beginning of this novel with a 14-mile hike he took in a Florida wilderness. So, I mean, he's probably right. He probably didn't. This concept of space that has been affected by some form of alien technology or alien intervention is an idea that I guess could easily come up in people's minds without one being affected by the other. However, it is amazing how similar the concept of the Area X, and I forgot what they called the area, the zone in Roadside Picnic. They're very close. But anyway, the book starts with these 4 women in the zone. There was going to be 5, a linguist, but the linguist decided not to go. Before she even crossed the border, she decided to quit. And they've been trained and debriefed for a really long time. And we quickly begin to learn that they were hypnotized by the psychologist who was there with them quite a bit. So there's the biologist, there's a surveyor, a land surveyor, there's an anthropologist, and the psychologist. And then the linguist decided not to come. So there's just these 4 women. And we learned pretty quickly that they were hypnotized. None of them remember crossing the border, although the biologist has a bit of a memory. They weren't supposed to look back, and she remembers, she kind of turned around and looked back anyway, and she remembers this square rectangular door into the Area X. They're not given any modern equipment. Apparently, modern equipment screws up the readings, so they have all these archaic devices, and instead of recorders, they have journals that they write all their experiences in the zone, and they're all told to write a lot in their journals. And this entire book is actually the biologist's journal of her time in Area X. And right after they enter, as they're going to base camp, they discover an anomaly that isn't on any of their maps, and it's this weird man-made looking hole in the ground that's circular and has stairs that kind of spiral down. It's a very large structure, and the biologist instantly thinks of it as a tower, and everybody else kind of thinks of it as a tunnel, and they decide to go in a little bit. They pop in a little bit. I think the psychologist stays out, and the other 3 women go down one landing, and it's dark, they're scared, and what they notice when they get down a few landings in this buried tower is that there is writing on the wall, and it has this creepy, almost cult-like message written on the wall. And it's this sentence that seems to go down and down and down into the tower, but it begins, "Where lies the strangling fruit that came from the hand of the sinner? I shall bring forth from the seeds of the dead." And then it keeps going and going from there. And the biologist is the first to go and examine these words, and she is shocked to find that the words are made of some kind of fungal material that are growing in the shape of the words. This novel is so creepy, and this opening is so good because it really starts to make you feel this creepiness. And of course, I had seen the movie before, so I was already thinking aliens. But if I was reading this without having seen the movie, I don't know if aliens would have come to my head yet. It has a very Lovecraft feel where there is something going on that we're not sure what is affecting the area to make this occur. And while she's looking at these words, she realizes that there's spores on this fungus, and she breathes in one of them and is completely terrified because she is a biologist. She knows what breathing in fungal spores can do, and is terrified that she's going to start to change. They all have these black boxes with a light on them, and they are told if the red light goes on that they're going to be that they're in danger and they need to get out of there quick. So she looks down and her red light is not on. I don't want to spend too much time covering this plot by plot. It's a super easy read. All kinds of stuff happens. One of the women dies. The psychologist turns out to be somehow working with the government agency that brought them in and has been hypnotizing them and is able to use words that send them into hypnotic states and control them. Right away, the biologist suddenly isn't hypnotizable anymore, and she thinks it's because of the spore, so she pretends to be hypnotized, and the next morning the anthropologist disappears and they decide to go back into the tower. And the night before, the psychologist had hypnotized everybody, but of course the biologist was just pretending to be under, and said, "You will continue to think the walls of the tunnel or tower are made out of stone." And when they go back to the tower, the biologist is shocked because the walls seem to be breathing. They are literally going into an organic creature. Incredible. The psychologist decides to stay and watch the opening, and the biologist and the surveyor go down into the tunnel and continue to go down and down and down until they discover the anthropologist's body, and it has been completely destroyed. And they know that if they go any farther, they're going to come in contact with a beast that is down at the bottom of this tower that they think is probably the thing that is writing these words on the wall. And the biologist nicknames it the Crawler because it leaves a slime trail. They've been walking through this slime trail in this organism. It's so incredible. Very well done. So they decide that the psychologist is messing with them somehow. They're afraid. They decide they're going to go up and ambush the psychologist. The surveyor can't really decide if she trusts the biologist. They get up to the top. The psychologist is gone. The surveyor wants to go right back to the border and get out. And the biologist decides that she's going to go to the Lighthouse, which is constantly talked about in their training and is on their maps. The surveyor decides to stay back, and the biologist goes to the lighthouse. At the lighthouse, she discovers first that there's been, it seems like, bloody wars fought, small bloody skirmishes, we'll say, fought in and around this lighthouse. And she finds a picture that has a lighthouse keeper that was taken probably 40, 50 years ago. And then she finds a hidden room with a decomposing pile of journals. And she's supposed to be part of the 12th expedition. But it turns out that that there's been probably 50, 60 expeditions. And she finds her husband's journal in there, but doesn't read it. Next, she notices that the psychologist has hurt herself. And she goes down and sees her, and the psychologist is dying because she jumped out the window. And she says that the biologist is starting to glow, and there really is a glow emanating off of her, the change from the Area X or breathing in the fungal spore, who knows. But the psychologist, turns out, works for what they call the Southern Reach or Area X. The government agency that is taking care of Area X is called Southern Reach. The psychologist works for Southern Reach and chose to come specifically herself on this expedition. And she tells the biologist that the area is growing a little bit each year. She comes back and notices a couple of animals that seem like they have human eyes, and then there's a beast that almost catches her that seems like a human in some kind of beast form, and we start to get the idea that the DNA of things, this on a cellular level, things are being messed with here in Area X. Because of her glowing change, the surveyor attacks her and shoots her and wounds her, and she kills the surveyor, and her wounds heal because of this change that's occurring in her, and she goes through this process. She lays and changes more and more and more, and decides that first she's going to read her husband's journal, which she does, and learns of his story. In fact, he even sees his team sees doppelgangers of their team. They follow themselves into the tower at one point because of this doubling. After reading this, she decides to go into the tower, and she goes down and down and down, and is finally comes in contact with the crawler, as she calls it. And this is the point that I was excited about but afraid to reach in this novel, because I was afraid that, like most cosmic horror, that the writer would fall back on the trope of saying she couldn't understand what she saw and it drove her insane, and end the story there. And Jeff Vandermeer does not do that. And for me, when I think of cosmic horror in the future, this is what I'm going to think of as my favorite because of that. And I know there's H.P. Lovecraft out there that can't be touched, but the fact that the writing continues after the revelation of the beast is huge in this novel, and I really love it. And the story, as I've told so far, is small. It's tiny. The reason you should read this is for the creepiness and the prose. The way that he builds up this moment of her coming in contact with the crawler in this buried tower that is an actual object. They take a scraping from the wall of the tower at one point, and she looks at it, and it's all human brain cells. So the tower's made out of like a human brain. It's crazy. But anyway, she goes down and she meets the crawler. And before she goes down, she talks about a time where she was a biologist in the field, working in the field, and was kind of was afraid that her grant was going to give out and she wouldn't have work anymore. So she started drinking a bunch, and one night stumbles drunkenly onto the beach into these tide pools that she's been studying, and sees a glowing large starfish that is colloquially called the Destroyer of Worlds because it's so big. About a foot, I think, is what she says in the book. And the way that Vandermeer links this analogy between the world destroyer starfish and her seeing the crawler and discovering a new species is absolutely, it's masterwork of how to thread an analogy. It's incredible. Anybody that's interested in writing at all would do well to read this novel, and especially this end bit is so worth it. It's incredible. Turning that corner, encountering the crawler for the first time was a similar experience at 1,000 times the magnitude. Similar experience connecting to seeing that starfish. If on those rocks those many years ago I could not tell sea from shore, here I could not tell stairs from ceiling, and even though I steadied myself with an arm against the wall seemed to cave in before my touch, and I struggled to keep from falling through it. There, in the depths of the tower, I could not begin to understand what I was looking at, and even now I have to work hard to pull it together from fragments. It is difficult to tell what blanks my mind might be filling in just to remove the weight of so many unknowns. Did I say I had seen golden light? As soon as I turned the corner entire, it was no longer golden but blue-green, and the blue-green light was like nothing I had experienced before. It surged out, blinding and bleeding and thick and layered and absorbing. It so overwhelmed my ability to comprehend shapes within it that I forced myself to switch from sight to focus at first on reports from other senses. The sound that came to me now was like a crescendo of ice or ice crystals shattering to form an unearthly noise that I had mistaken earlier for buzzing, and which began to take on an intense melody and rhythm that filled my brain. Vaguely, from some far-off place, I realized that the words on the wall were being infused with sound as well, but that I had not had the capacity to hear it before. The vibration had a texture and a weight, and with it came a burning smell as of late fall leaves or of like some vast and distant engine close to overheating. The taste on my tongue was like brine set ablaze. No words can, no photographs could. As I adjusted to the light, the crawler kept changing at a lightning pace, as if to mock my ability to comprehend it. It was a figure within a series of refracted panes of glass. It was a series of layers in the shape of an archway. It was a great slug-like monster ringed by satellites, or even odder creatures. It was a glistening star. My eyes kept glancing off of it as if an optic nerve was not enough. Then it became an overwhelming hugeness in my battered vision, seeming to rise and keep rising as it leapt toward me. The shape spread until it was even where it was not or should not have been. It seemed now more like a kind of obstacle or wall or thick closed door blocking the stairs. Not a wall of light, gold, blue, green, existing in some other spectrum, but a wall of flesh that resembled light, with sharp, curving elements within it and textures like ice when it has frozen from flowing water, an impression of living things lazily floating in the air around it like soft tadpoles, but at the limits of my vision, so I could not tell if this was akin to those floating dark motes that are tricks of the eye that do not exist. With this fractured mass, within all of these different impressions of the crawler, half blinded, but still triangulating through my other senses, I thought I saw a darker shadow of an arm, or a kind of echo of an arm, in constant blurring motion, continuously imparting to the left-hand wall a repetition of depth and signal that made its progress laboriously slow, its message, its code of change, of recalibrations and adjustments, of transformations, and perhaps another dark shadow, vaguely head-shaped above the arm, but as indistinct as if I had been swimming in murky water and seen in the distance a shape obscured by thick seaweed. Eventually, this being enters her brain, and it is completely torturous, and it is a change, and it's probably a change at a cellular level as whatever this thing is invades her being, and she, of course, can never be the same after this occurs. But the book doesn't stop there, and that is what is so incredible about it. I read this passage just because I wanted to give you an idea of how well Jeff Vandermeer handled writing about a creature. And this is something that happens in sci-fi a lot. How do you describe the aliens? How do you describe something that's incomprehensible to are human brains. And I keep calling this an alien, and so far the book has hinted at aliens a lot, but I'm not 100% sure. But I do believe it's aliens, and I'm sure more will be revealed as I read through the other two novels. Of course, when Contact, the movie, tried to describe the aliens just said, oh, we've changed our form to look like something you understand. And in this book, this thing is constantly taking a different form. But I don't think it's changing. I think her consciousness is trying to understand, seeing something that can't be seen, that can't exist, that doesn't make any sense. Eventually, this thing throws her body down the stairs after it has tortured her and changed her, I'm assuming, on a molecular level. And so she goes deeper and deeper into the tower. And as she goes deeper and deeper into the tower, she sees a doorway, this white rectangular shape. And it reminds her of when she looked back at the border. And I assume if she would have kept going and passed through those doors, that she would come outside of Area X. But she chooses not to, and I think this is really important. Whoever did the plot synopsis on Wikipedia states that no matter how much she tries to get to this rectangle, she could never make it to the rectangle, so she turns around and goes the other way. I don't think that's true. From what I understand from the text, she believes that will lead her out of Area X and chooses not to go. And I like that because I like the concept that she is making this choice. It's not stuff happening to her. It is giving her agency in her choices. She chooses to turn around and go back past the crawler again, which I absolutely love, because in cosmic horror it always ends with their first sight of this creature they can't comprehend, and Jeff Vandermeer is not only going to describe it one time perfectly, he's going to have her turn around and walk past it again. And this time when she walks past it, she doesn't dare look at it, and it's not interested in her because it's already done what it needed to do to her. But she does look back as she's leaving, and in the middle of the wall, or in the middle of the crawler, either the crawler or the wall, she sees, I think it's the wall, she sees the face of the lighthouse keeper and realizes that this all began with the lighthouse keeper, that this thing, this alien thing, somehow came to Earth and discovered the lighthouse keeper and changed the lighthouse keeper in the same way it had changed her, but in this case never let him go. And this entire underground tower is what remains of the lighthouse keeper, and the words on the wall are from the brain of the lighthouse keeper. And this kind of final torturous image is absolutely incredible. This is a masterclass in cosmic horror. I know I'm repeating myself, but that's it. That is the truth of this. In the end, she goes back up and decides to follow in the footsteps of her husband to this island that is part of Area X, and that's where we leave her. And I am amazed at how well written this is and how trippy the prose are when she sees that. This is a classic tale done in a modern way that is unflinching and incredible and just absolutely worth the read. I can't say that enough. Read this book. I am halfway through the second novel. I've gotten mixed reviews. Some people have said make sure to read the other two novels, and other people have said stop right after the first one, don't read anymore. I did choose to read ahead, and the second novel is obviously a completely different beast so far. At first I was really interested. It's got a big change of point of view. I have hit a point in the middle here of this second novel that I feel is a little bit of a lull in the storytelling. We're not in Area X, we're at the Southern Reach, and it just isn't as interesting to me as this first book. I will keep going. I'm going to read all three. But this first one, 5 stars, cannot recommend enough. Will probably end up being one of my favorite books of the year when I go over everything I've read this year. Go read it if you haven't. It's a great time. I think that's all I want to say about it. Yeah, if you watched this to the end, thank you very much. If you liked it, click like. If you like this kind of content, click subscribe, because we'll be making a lot more of it in the future. And thanks so much for watching.